There's, oh, good.
Oops.
So there's no invasive or exotic plants in the lake, which we're happy, that's what you want. Part of the reason why it's good and you don't have issues is there's not a public launch, which tends to bring in problems from other lakes. And there's no upstream lakes or public boat launches upstream of the lake that could introduce invasive species and other problems. Next slide, please. More watershed characteristics. This is the same slide, essentially. It's 3 slides showing the lake and the watershed. This is land use. So the red areas are where it's developed. The green areas are where it's forested. And these yellow areas are sort of like mowed areas. This is the soils within the watersheds. There's the lake, this is the watershed. What you see is a lot of different types of soils, but for the most part, they're well-drained soils, which you like, and they're also on very steep slopes. Which you can see here in the topographical map, there's a lot of steep areas that drain right to the lake. So that's part of the reason why your watershed's small, is those steep hills around the lake shed the other way. Next slide. So for our program in 2022, we did monthly water quality monitoring starting in June and went through October for 5 total dates. Measured field parameters, which included dissolved oxygen, temperature, pH, etc. We did lab samples that analyzed for different parameters, including phosphorus and nitrogen, which are nutrients. And then we also sent samples off to an algae lab to look for phytoplankton, and then we internally did our own zooplankton assessment, which is the little microscopic animals that live in the water. We also did aquatic plant mapping in August, a storm drain assessment for water quality in October, and then we performed hydrologic and nutrient budget analysis, which we'll get into all of those things in the coming slides. Next slide. So for the water quality results, it's all about the phosphorus. That's really what we're focused on, and you'll see why as we go through these slides. This is the lake. The outlet cut off here by this bar, but the inlet, there were 2 storm drains, drain 3 and drain 4, that we actually were able to get water from, and the deep hole was right there. Those are sort of our key sampling sites for the past year. Next slide. So for the in-lake data, that's just at the deep hole. We have surface and bottom samples for the 5 different, it's cut off, but 5 different dates. Trust me, there's 5. And what you'll see is dissolved oxygen or dissolved phosphorus and total phosphorus. These are our key nutrients. That's really what I'm concerned with. And what you see is anything above 0.02 starts to be a concern for me as a lake manager. And you have at the surface 0.055, 0.06 for total phosphorus. This is the dissolved fraction. And so the difference between total and dissolved is just dissolved is what the algae can immediately use. Total is sort of the particles plus the dissolved fraction. So it's both. So when we look at total, anything over 0.02 is a problem. So you're at 0.03 in the bottom, 0.06 in the top. It quickly gets better though, as you see, until the fall again. This is the October date. Actually, the September date is high. By October, it's back to good. And you can't really see that on the slide because of the little bar at the bottom. But what we will see why that happens. The other thing we see is some really high turbidity in the lake, which is in June, but that's not a, it can occur throughout the year. It was just that one time. Let's go to the next slide. So we also looked at water clarity, which is measured by Secchi disk, which is just a disk that you lower down into the water and you see how far down you see in meters. And this is data from 1981 to 2022. So it's our 1 year plus all the data that you folks shared with us. And we put it into a graph, and this is what it looks like. And you look at that and you scratch your head and go, well, here's the line. This red line shows the trend over time. And you say, well, fantastic. It hasn't gotten worse over time. We're happy with that. Hasn't gotten better, hasn't gotten worse, but 4 meter clarity is pretty good. Anything under 1.2, they'll start shutting the lake down. And you can see there's only been one instance in this whole time where you've measured under 1.2 meters of clarity. So that's sort of an algae bloom type occurrence. So fantastic, that's what you want. Next slide. So what we actually did is we took it and looked at it based on seasonal data. So we took the spring data and the fall data and the summer data and separated them out into 3 separate lines. So fall is this orange line, summer is the blue line, and spring is the green line. It's all the same data from the last slide, but looked at a little differently. Now, if you hit the button, that's the trend line for the fall. It's not flat. So what that tells me is that the water clarity in the fall is getting less clear over time. And then the next line, that's your summer water clarity. It might be a little better, but for the most part, it's pretty flat. So what's happening is it looks flat when you look at it all, but your summer clarity is maybe getting a little better, but your fall clarity is getting worse. So that's something to look at and try to understand a little more as we look into the data set. Next slide. So here's.
What about the spring clarity?
Spring clarity was relatively flat. I didn't put the line on there because I didn't want too many lines cluttering up my graph. But temperature profiles, this is sort of, you've probably seen these every year when you've done your reports, but what we have, and my axis is hidden by this bar at the bottom, but essentially, when they're vertical like this, those are your turnover events, when the temperature is the same at the surface and the bottom. Here, the temperature is much colder at the bottom than it is at the top. And so what you're seeing is the turnover occurring in the fall, basically, September, October. Next slide. And what you see when that, hard to tell, but this is actually the fall. The fall lines are vertical when oxygen is essentially, it's oxygenated from the surface to the bottom, which you'd expect. Whereas in the summer, you get some really low oxygen levels in the bottom water, which is also normal, nothing unusual. Next slide. But when you, and I'll keep getting into this, and we keep getting my stuff cut off at the bottom, but this is the inlet and outlet data. So the last slide you saw that looked like this was just that surface and bottom of the lake in the deep hole. Here is the inlet is the first and the outlet is the second. What you see is your inlet during June was a little above where we like to see it, actually 2 or 3 times higher than what we like to see. So more phosphorus than we want. And it carried on into July. It was also still a little hot. And then again in the fall, it picked up and we started to get. So what that's telling me is the watershed is feeding phosphorus-rich water to your lake. Maybe not during the summer so much because you've got plant uptake, a lot of active growing stuff within the watershed. But in those shoulder seasons, you're getting nutrient moving into the lake. Yes, sir.
Does it also factor in that there's reduced flow in the summer?
So these are just concentrations. So they're not loads they're not flow weighted numbers. They're just concentrations. So yes, these are cleaner and less flow. In the spring, we have more flow and dirtier. So it's actually worse if you think about it that way.
For sake of clarity, inlet is you're collecting a water sample from Erdoney Road Pond, or what we call that main
Yep,
feeder into the
Yep.
lake, outlet is the dam.
yep,
Am I-
that's correct, yep.
Thank you.
So the out,
Carl, excuse me, so is that because of the runoff over the winter and maybe what they're?
no, because these are in June, so we're well into, this is post street sweeping, post whatever maintenance is done on catch basins and the watershed. This is like really the stuff that the lake is getting needs some work if you want to protect the lake long term.
And
Yep,
Well, you don't measure in May, so would,
well, I would measure in May,
but,
but we didn't get under contract till June.
well, but if we measured in May, we might see the same high numbers, because it could
Correct.
be
Could
from,
be even worse,
correct.
because if you were to go out and, I don't know when they do street sweeping, I think it's like April usually.
Typically.
Yeah, so in April, you're probably getting some really high numbers.
Right, that's what I'm.
So, the other thing to look at
They start.
is in August, when you have those really low flow conditions, the oxygen levels in the tributary coming out in the outlet were really, really low. So it's partly because it's seepage through the dam, it's bottom flow coming out of the lake during that period when the lake is stratified and low oxygen levels at the bottom. And that bottom water, so, but basically the tributary flowing out of the lake is not really suitable to aquatic life because the water, the oxygen level is so low. I mean, these are
When you say,
1 milligram per liter is, you can't live in that if you're aquatic.
when you're taking, say you're taking it at the outlet, where are you taking it, the pipe at the back of the dam, from weak poles, from?
Yeah, for this one, that's where that one was taken, it's downstream, yeah.
Because
Because there was nothing flowing, normally it's done at the surface during for the outlet, right, at the spillway. But for, when the spillway wasn't spilling, we grabbed samples downstream.
Downstream past the dam.
Yeah, went down just below the dam.
Okay. In the pool.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So, interesting, next slide. This is just, this is a report on all the data we collected. So phytoplankton or plankton, we have phyto, which is up here, which is the algae. Zooplankton is down here in the second table, all from the deep hole. And what you see is, this is just a percent breakdown of algae. So all the algae collected. We only had 3.8% blue-green algae, which blue-greens are the ones that create toxic blooms and tend to be a problem. And so you can see 3.8, 13.5, 1.2, 2.4, 1.3. Very normal to have blue-green algae in your lake. You want it, it's not unusual at all. It's when it becomes extremely dense and becomes dominant that it starts forming these toxic releases. It's a mechanism it uses to fight the other algae when they get dense. Erdoney Road is a sample that was submitted from October 28th. And I think that was collected right from a bloom area that was observed. And the blue-green algae it was almost all blue-green algae that we sampled. Well, we didn't sample, but was sampled. So 91 or 92%, confirming that it was blue-green algae and that the lake has the ability to result in blue-green algae blooms. It wasn't extensive, it wasn't throughout the lake, it was just in that one area. And this is a little blocked, but what we learned from the zooplankton is you want zooplankton that are large-bodied zooplankton because they graze on the algae, like cows, basically. They go out and they eat that material. So having a good, and you have a nice, there's probably like 8 or 12 species of zooplankton in the lake, so there's a relatively diverse group. And these ones with the green are some of the large bodied, and there's actually some here that are hidden by the bar. So all through all 5 months, there were large bodied zooplankton grazing, so that if you do have algae growth, they sort of consume it and keep those numbers down and keep the water clarity up. Next slide. Kind of moving fast, but I don't want to take a few slides to go through. Plant mapping results, this is just a slide of plant mapping. We've got surface plants that we look at, but also subsurface plants. We use a throw rig to find, toss that out and pull in and see what we've got. Next slide. And what we have is, all native plants, which is good. This map here is the plant coverage. So where we saw plants growing on the bottom and the different colors, you can't see the red, but basically red is 75 to 100% of the bottom is covered with plants. Basically, you look down and it's all plants. Everything that's light green or yellow is 1 to 25 or 26 to 50, basically quarters. So you look down and it's less than 25% growth of plants and you can see some bottom. That's where you get the light green, the green color. The yellow is where it gets a little more dense. And then more dense when it gets orange, and then red is the most dense. That's sort of how we characterize it. And what you can see is there's a couple really dense spots, but for the most part, it's a relatively balanced, low, it doesn't cover the whole lake because the lake's too deep in most areas to grow aquatic plants. And here, what you actually see is a biovolume map, which is, if you were to look at the water column, the whole from the bottom to where your boat sits, how much of that column is full of aquatic plants. So when it's half full, it's 50% biovolume. If it's right up at the surface, it's 100% biovolume, or 75 to 100% is what we categorize it as. So that what you don't see is any real red color showing that the plants are growing to the surface and the whole water column is full. So if you have a lily growing on the surface, lily pads, they grow across, but there's a lot of empty space there, so the biovolume isn't full per se. We go to a lot of lakes where everything is, the plants fill up the water column, grow across the surface, and then what that does is it's not good for habitat because there's not a lot of space for fish to live within that dense biomass. And when those big dense plant beds go to nighttime, they start consuming oxygen. So aquatic life living in the plant beds actually get either stunted or killed. You can get fish kills if you have like a cove that's just full of aquatic plants because there's no oxygen. They start to decay at night, essentially. When they stop making photosynthesis, they start decaying. So you don't have that problem. The lake's relatively healthy and plant free. There's plants, good balance. It's what you want. Next slide. And then these are the species that we had, Potamogetans or native pond weeds, muskgrass and bladderwort and southern naiad and stonewort. Water celery might be the only one that would be a nuisance for people that do boating because it's also called cape grass. It looks like a piece of green cape if you've ever seen it, and it will grow strands about 2 feet long, sometimes a little longer. But then in the fall, it'll send up this runner that will put up a flower at the surface. And so as a result, you get these strands that look like little ropes going up to the surface, and they can get tangled in people's props. If you have them out in front of your dock, you'll find them to be annoying. Just rake them out. Next slide. But all those were needed, so that's the key point there. Storm drain assessment, again, just a reminder, it's storm drain 3 and storm drain 4, which is down by the inlet. Next slide. These are the 5 that, too far. It's okay. You're doing great, actually. So these are the 5 storm drains that we looked at. Drain 1, if any of these look familiar to you, great. Drain 2 was not flowing when we went out there. Drain 3, which is this one right here next to the jet ski, that was flowing. Drain 4 was flowing, and drain 5 was not. Just for reference. Next, but one of the things you can see is they're all relatively large, which means when people put in a big drain like that, they expect big flow. So at some point, not when we went out in October, but at some point, if you were to go in the spring, these are probably putting out decent amount of flow. People don't put in a pipe that big unless they're expecting a decent amount of water to come in.
How are these drains picked?
Well, how did I pick them?
Well, yeah, because there are more drains than that going into the lake.
Now, what we
I had
tried to
some
do,
help.
Henry, is I think we gave them 8 to 10. I'd have to go back and look in the primary or key sections around the lake. So one at Woodland Terrace, one at Route 87 upper, one at Route 87 lower,
Yeah,
one at the town beach, that large one, one on Erdoney Road.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
didn't-
we were given a smattering of them to pick from.
We actually provided a map.
None in the Sleepy Hollow area though?
I think there might have been one at Sleepy Hollow. I'm pretty sure, but I provided a map of the lake and just outlined here.
Where they were, and we tried to pick the ones that were
Yeah,
flowing when we went. So these drain 3 and drain 4 were the only ones that you can see actually.
there was a Sleepy Hollow, I'm positive, but I can't remember which one.
So next slide. And to be honest, the drains are really, whether we got them from one drain or 2 drains, they're representative of the quality of water you're gonna get from a storm drain. It's not gonna be way worse or way better necessarily in the water, different places. You can go up in the watershed and sample storm drains that are going to the tributaries that flow into the lake, and you're gonna see bad water quality too. Storm drains just have worse water quality because they're storm drains. They're designed to convey the dirt and the accumulated atmospheric deposition that lands on the streets and get them into the streams and into the lakes. It's just their nature. And until those are redesigned or changed in their design to trap the phosphorus and infiltrate the phosphorus, that's the solution to getting this out of the system. So what you see here is drain 3 and drain 4, 0.03, 0.08. Now 0.08, 0.03, it's a storm drain. It's not gonna be as clean as your lake water. So that's understandable. But when you see 0.08 at storm drain 4, which is that one, it's, and really almost 0.1 when you look at total phosphorus. So that's my concern there. And also, unlike all the other data you saw, the nitrogen, particularly nitrate nitrogen, is high. And total nitrogen. And total nitrogen is just nitrate plus nitrite plus TKN equals total nitrogen. So you add them all up and that's the total.
So where is drain 3 and 4 in the town and coming around the lake?
They're by the inlet and the outlet, essentially.
So is that the, okay,
I think one of the drains was in Buell's Cove, down by, oh geez.
Yeah, you can go back 2 or 3 slides. I can show you the map.
And a lot of that wetlands is from. Lake
That's
Erie.
drain 3.
Let me see.
okay, that's drain 3,
There's the outlet.
Okay, that's Woodland Terrace.
okay, and where's drain 4?
Drain 4 is right, it's under
Down
this.
in Buell's Cove.
That's
down
Buell's
this
Cove.
By the inlet.
So that's
Buell's-
where
Erdoney.
we had a problem with,
Yes,
The algae bloom.
no,
No, Bill.
well, we had a lot of, not cyanobacteria, but a lot of algae over there, that green filamentous stuff.
Yeah, well, that's probably part of the reason why it's occurring there.
We do believe there may be some use of land care types of activities there.
Well, and that's where you get the nitrogen component, because one of the things, there's 2 things to know about the 2 types of nutrients that are coming into a lake. There's phosphorus and there's nitrogen. Those are nutrients. Phosphorus, if you get it, it falls from the sky as dry deposition. It falls as in rainwater, and the rain itself is full of phosphorus too. It picks up the particles in the air and it lands on the ground. If that water infiltrates into the ground and moves through the ground, phosphorus absorbs the particles in the soil, so it disappears. It essentially sticks to the sediment and it filters the water before it gets to the lake. Phosphorus is great, easy to manage. If you can get it, so even if you have a septic system with a big leach field, if that leach field is far enough from the lake, the phosphorus gets absorbed before it gets to the lake. Nitrogen, on the other hand, does not do that. It moves into the soil and shoot right through. Does no uptake. So a septic system puts out about 35 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. Nice and high. And it just moves through.
But the nitrogen cycle, once it's in the lake, it can be released, whereas phosphorus is there forever. unless we
Phosphorus
bring it out.
stays, right, unless it flows over the dam, it's gonna stay in the lake. So the only way it leaves your lake is when you do a drawdown, you flush, you're dropping out the water with the phosphorus in it. We have a lake we manage up in, Massachusetts. They were doing an annual drawdown. And the way they were doing it, they actually had siphons that they had to turn on, essentially fill up a tube and get it flowing, and then they didn't have an outlet structure to open the dam, so they had to suck it over the top, and they had set them at like, doing a 6-foot drawdown, and they set them at like 7 or 8 feet. I said, if you guys extended those down to about 20 feet, and you ran them, you could pull your bottom water off, which is full of phosphorus, and drain it out of your lake rather than pull the clean water and send the yucky phosphorus rich stuff downstream. So they did that, and it was just a matter of adding some more PVC to the end of the tube. And for a couple of it cost them about $30 to put in the extensions, and now they're dropping the phosphorus levels in their bottom water and sending it downstream to somebody else.
Yeah, that's happening, downstream.
Yep. So, but back to the nitrogen. So nitrogen is really a tougher nut to manage. If you put fertilizer on your lawn, it goes, if the grass doesn't take it up, it moves through the lawn into the groundwater. The groundwater moves to the lake. If you have dog waste, pet waste, chickens, horses,
Geese,
geese. Well, geese are a problem. A goose will do about 1 kilogram of phosphorus per goose per year. If you have resident geese at the lake. So a flock of,
2.2 pounds.
and it'll blow your mind, because when you see how much your lake can handle in a year, if you have 30 geese, it's really detrimental to your lake. It's probably 10% of your nutrient load
Yeah.
So 1 kilogram phosphorus per goose,
per goose per year.
which is.
So if they're
2.2
only,
pounds.
if you get like a flock of 100 geese that show up for a week and just move on, it's really not a big deal. And the reason I'm so, the geese are a problem is because the geese generally feed on land. They eat grass, they eat cornfields, and then they come to the lake and do their business. Ducks, on the other hand, or other waterfowl, eat plants and bugs in the lake. And it's sort of,
Do a little.
they're just, they're cycling the nutrients. They're not bringing new nutrients in. And geese are bigger too. So flip back through a couple of these, please. Down. So getting to the nutrient budget, which is where all that data comes together, and what we looked at to have, this is just a generalized phosphorus budget, phosphorus being the nutrient of concern. There's natural phosphorus, there's phosphorus in the soil. There's phosphorus that's just, it's not a chemical that we create, it's out there in the environment. It falls dry and wet, as we talked about, onto the lake surface itself. It gets accumulated in the lake as sediment, and then it gets resuspended each year when the lake turns over. When a lake goes anoxic at the bottom, the phosphorus that's absorbed to those sediment particles at the bottom actually disassociate. It becomes released from the sediment under anoxic conditions. And so when that happens, you get this thick, I'll call it thick, heavy concentration of phosphorus-rich water at the bottom. And then the temperature becomes all the same, and that flips up and you get a fall algae bloom. And so that's part of the reason when you see that ziggity-zaggity clarity chart, your fall is getting worse over time. What that tells me is your sediment is accumulating phosphorus because it doesn't leave the lake, it just goes in. It settles there, and your bottom water is getting richer in phosphorus over time, which is causing that fall algae bloom to occur. And that's what that trend was when we saw that trend. And then there's sources that you can control: shoreline erosion, street runoff, lawn clippings, fertilizer, wastewater. pumping your septic systems annually if you live around the lake, things like that. Take that out of the watershed, take it out of the lake system. So anything you can do to reduce these things helps maintain your lake. And there's a whole bunch of things you can do. My message got cut off here, but you know, phosphorus is the limiting nutrient. That's really the focus for everything. So let's go to the next slide.
Carl, when you say that phosphorus is known to be the limiting nutrient as opposed to nitrogen, how do you ascertain that?
It's done with a ratio essentially, not a ratio of phosphorus to nitrogen being 15:1. If it's over 15:1, it's phosphorus limited. If it's under, it's nitrogen. And so that's just a general, but out of all the lakes in New England, 95% of them are phosphorus limited, freshwater lakes. Whereas as you get into different areas of the country, nitrogen can actually become a limiting factor, where there's so much phosphorus in the lake already. A little bit of nitrogen causes the bloom as opposed to the other way around. Right, in our environment, we have plenty of nitrogen and not a lot of phosphorus, and that's just the nature of New England soils primarily.
Carl, so going back to the people in Massachusetts that put the siphon in, is every year going forward, are we gonna be building up more phosphorus on the bottom of the lake? Is that just gonna be normal?
If you do nothing, yeah,
Right, we don't control the local, what we can control.
there's things you can do to reduce it too, if you wish, but that's a different game. We're just monitoring and assessing for now.
Okay.
But let's go to the next step and you can decide what you want to do. So this is a hydrologic budget. Hydrologic is just a fancy word for water, the water budget. Where does the water that gets to the lake come from? And we need to know the watershed area, the lake area, the circumference, the volume, how much seepage comes in from groundwater into the lake. We calculate that from different sources of data that are available, how much rainfall we get per year, how much runoff based on the slopes and the soils in the watershed, how much base flow we have. And when you tally it all up, this is the chart that sort of matters. And you have a total of 5.7 cubic feet per second coming into your lake on an average annual basis. Every second, that's how much water comes in. It's a big amount of cubic feet. Not crazy for a lake this size, but out of that 5.7, 0.1 plus comes from groundwater. So your septic, your nutrients coming off of lawns, if that's really filthy, it's not a lot of water out of the whole budget. So it's anything you can do to improve that is good, but you can do no fertilizer in the whole watershed and your lake won't change much. So just point of reference, and this is why we do budgets, to understand who do we point the finger at, and what things do we do who do we target first if we're gonna try to improve things or protect things. Direct precipitation in comparison is 0.7 roughly out of the 5.7.
That means direct into the lake.
Rain and snow landing on the lake itself full of, it has phosphorus in it. But you can't fix that. You're not gonna tackle that how do we stop that? So.
Put a tent up.
Right, a nice awning, something retractable awning.
Rain dance.
But surface water is 4.9 CFS cubic feet per second out of the 5.7. So that's your inlets, your storm drains, and sheet flow runoff that just comes across. So it's a big piece of it, more than 80%. And we break it down by dry weather and wet weather flow. Wet weather is 4.4, dry weather is 0.5.
Wow.
So the base flow, the stuff coming in when it hasn't rained for a while,
Yeah.
those aren't your storm drains. That's just basically your inlet during the summer dry flow. But what happens is you get big pulses of water that come in when it rains, and then it settles back down and you have very little. So when you have high flow, it's it's not flowing at 4.3. That's the average wet weather flow. It's really probably flowing at 20 or 25 CFS and averages at 4.3. So that's where the water's coming from. Next slide. Oh, yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's all right. I just was highlighting my thing.
Right.
That's where.
That's where we have to focus.
That's where you go. So this is the nutrient budget right here. And there's a lot more complexity to the nutrient budget. You don't have to really I'll go through it in the report. But it looks at things like the phosphorus concentration in the lake, the phosphorus concentration of the water coming into the lake, the inflowing phosphorus concentration, the outflowing phosphorus, the lake area, the lake volume, the depth, how fast it flushes per year. You're basically at around 1 flushing per year. So your whole volume is exchanged once per year. Good to know. So what we have over here is different models, and we run 6, 7 different models that are all different researchers that all came up with a theory on how to calculate the phosphorus in the lake. And some rely on some of these parameters and some rely on more of those parameters. But what you see is it all boils down to a predicted concentration of anywhere between 6 and 16 parts per billion in the lake. We just take an average of those models and it comes out to 9 as an average. And then you say, well, that's great, but what's that mean? It got cut off, but when you translate those concentrations into loads, which is based on the flow, you end up seeing that the models average about 202 kilograms of phosphorus coming into the lake on an average annual basis. So 202, you're like, well, is that good or bad? The models also predict, based on all these features of your lake, how much load it can handle, which is called up to, it's called the permissible load. Anything up to that is permissible. And a critical load, which is where if you exceed that, it's gonna be gross all the time. So you don't wanna get to that. You're permissible, basically where it starts to get ugly, but not ugly, just starts to turn from a nice lake to a not so nice lake, is 240 kilograms per year. You're at 202. So if you have 40 geese that show up and stay here all year, you're now at 240. Don't want that. So let's flip the next slide. Oh, wait, yeah, go ahead and see if it does one of those circles.
Carl, do you have any historic data from when this was done, maybe 20 or 30 years ago? Because I think,
Starting in 98.
Yeah, I think you gave me
I sent you
I
that.
haven't looked through it yet.
I think we were pretty close to
I think
that
you-
same balance point.
Absolutely.
Well,
So
I remember
it's good.
240.
It hasn't changed much. This is based on this year's data only.
No, but I mean, that's what's
But
good is we're still in time, you know.
yeah, well, and if
Things
you
are-
remember that ziggity zaggity
Yeah.
trend line that we showed, it hasn't gotten worse to any significant degree over the last 4 years. And so what you're seeing is the model is showing the same exact result. It hasn't gotten worse over the last 40 years. Next, click again.
Yeah. What's you said permissible load was 240.
Yeah,
What's the
critical
critical load?
479. And I've got a slide that'll show this better.
Okay.
See if we can
When
get
we
it.
did the sources of the phosphorus, where's is the biggest source from the inlets, or is it because we've already got so much in the lake already?
No, it's the inlets, and I'll get into that.
And we know kind of how much they're adding to that?
Yeah, and it's because so much of the water's coming from the inlets. So if you think of it that way, the internal recycling is something that I haven't modeled yet. The internal recycling is done using sediment concentration which I don't have data on the sediment concentration, how much phosphorus is in the sediment. So that piece of the model, you have to assume an average number. We do recommend we get some sediment data so that we can calculate that.
Do we have any kind of understanding of when we lower it 6 feet in the fall every year, how much phosphorus we're actually getting rid of? Or are we assuming that
No.
we're just getting rid of it and replacing it with
That's what's happening,
upcoming?
right. Right.
That's what.
If you think of it, if you weren't to lower it, it's still gonna lose phosphorus because it's gonna continue to flow and spill water out. Right?
Well, but I'm assuming if we're not lowering it to 6 feet, we're not gonna get that full 1 turn a year.
You'll still get the 1 turn, because the 1 turn, the one-time flushing is based entirely on how much water comes into the basin.
Oh, I see.
So it's basically, you take the volume of the lake and you take how many cubic feet flow in and how many cubic feet are in the lake and how many seconds it takes to push those cubic feet out.
So if we didn't lower it at all, it would still be.
It would
pushing
still-
off
still-
over the
yeah,
spill.
It'll
Yeah.
still push over the spillway at the same rate. It's just a question of whether your bathtub's full before it starts spilling, or if you empty it and it then fills and then spills, it's all still the same amount of water spilling. Next slide. So this is a simplified phosphorus. I also looked at nitrogen, which I didn't cover on that slide because it was down here. We look at 3 things. The minimum load is basically just, I know for sure you're getting at least 83 kilograms per year. The models predict it's actually closer to 202, so that's the number we use. 240 is the permissible, 479 is your critical, and nitrogen we do is something similar, but you're getting 2,400 kilograms per year of nitrogen at least, and the models predict actually closer to 4,000 kilograms of nitrogen. So there's plenty of nitrogen, which is why phosphorus is limiting, and that sort of helps you understand that a little bit. When you look at it, you go, well, if we're getting 4,000 pounds, you'd think this would be disgusting, but it isn't, because the phosphorus is the controlling factor. Next slide. This is my chart to show you what you see, or what I'm seeing. This is water clarity. So as you get higher up, it's worse water clarity. Here's,
Like in meters,
yeah, except I don't put meters.
that's fine, I just.
Yeah,
I
so
understand the scale.
It's just worse. More algae at the top, less algae if you're down here. So the lake, this curve shows you what happens to in your lake when you add phosphorus. So down here, we're at 0 phosphorus, you have nice clean water. As you get to 240 kilograms per year, you start to hit that inflection point where water clarity decreases. And when you get to 479, it's now decreased as far as it's gonna decrease. It won't get, it's only getting so bad. Water is, it's not gonna keep growing algae. Eventually other things become limiting besides phosphorus.
So we're at the base of the exponential curve up.
You're down here, which is anywhere down here is where you wanna be, but the closer you are to this 240 is where you start to see, oh, a little algae bloom here, or a little algae bloom. All of a sudden you get up here, you've got 2 weeks of funky water throughout the lake, all, you know. By the time you get here, May, it starts getting funky and low clarity, and it stays filthy all summer. And I say filthy, it's just algae rich. And that's where you, this, somewhere along this continuum is where you start to see algal blooms cause blue-green algae, which causes lake shutdowns because the water is too rich with blue-greens, which produce toxins, and the Department of Health will shut the lake down. So you don't want to get anywhere into that. And then I work on some lakes. Their loading is over here or here.
Wow.
And then to get to where they see good water clarity starting, they have to cut their load in half and half and half to start to get to good water. So you guys are where you want to be. As far as lakes go, this is where you want to be. This is good.
Well, but to stay ahead of it.
To stay ahead of it, exactly.
That's-
Because, and when you're on this,
presents itself.
When you're on this slope, the nice thing about it is a little bit of reduction in phosphorus sees a big benefit. People feel very rewarded because they're like, great, we've achieved something. Look at how great our lake looks this year. These people, when they're way over there, it's hard to motivate people because you're like, and usually when you're way over there, the watershed is huge. And that's really the factor is they have so much source within their watershed, they can't fix it. You guys have a small watershed, you're at a very good concentration. You just don't want to start creeping up that line.
Does temperature have any effect on that curve? Relative to, no, it's,
Not really.
well, it doesn't matter if it's 110 or.
Well, yeah, I guess if it gets to 110, there won't be a lot of.
I'm talking about a heat wave in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
That curve incrementally.
Well, what
go higher.
happens, algae bloom faster when it's warmer. So if the water's warmer, they have more divisions of the cells. So they, so you can go from no cells to a lot of cells really fast, but the lot of cells can't happen unless you've got the nutrient to support that growth. So your lake, because it has such good water quality, the only way you get a fast bloom occurring that would take you by surprise is if you had warm conditions and a big slug of phosphorus coming in, and you don't have the slug of phosphorus.
Yeah.
So,
When we have the phosphorus down
Deep.
deep in the summertime,
and I haven't confirmed that yet, but yes,
Okay,
I believe
okay, what-
the water is,
where's the
Yeah.
bottom of the thermocline? I mean, if we were to look,
it was on that chart of 10, 20 slides back, but it was basically right around 6 meters or so.
okay, it would seem that it's beneficial to, if we're allowed to dump phosphorus downstream, it would seem to be beneficial, as you say, to use a siphon and take it off of the bottom and to take it off while it's still more concentrated at the bottom rather than wait for it to be
So
in the
that's-
fall mix.
That's exactly a very good point. So what these folks do, they have a dam, the people, it's up in Lunenburg, Massachusetts, just north of Worcester. And they have to release out of their dam anyway. They manage the lake and they have to have flow downstream a minimum amount at all times. It's part of their permit for running the dam. So instead of releasing surface water, they're now releasing bottom water during the summer. The drawdown is a little different in that when you guys, I believe you have a bottom release, right? So you just open up the gate and it
Well,
releases from the
it's
bottom.
out from about 12 feet down as opposed to the 20 feet down.
Yeah.
You might be able to get deeper, so we could
12
get
feet,
deeper.
yeah, you're not
It
getting,
used to be deeper.
It used to be deeper, and so part of why we may be declining is we're not as deep as we used to.
Correct.
Exactly.
Pull that off from.
yeah, because 12 feet is only 4 meters. That's not gonna get you below the thermocline.
No,
So,
But in any event, then, if we're at 12, we're better to be taking it out during the mixing part of it, because at least some of the bottom stuff is the concentration in the water we're taking out.
the thing is your water is relatively good. So when you say it's mixing, when it's mixed, the water in the lake is relatively good.
Yeah, but we've still got that lack of clarity that you notice, that it's
Just
dirtier.
creeping up, yeah.
So it'd be better to get rid of dirtier water than
we
clear
know what the
water.
source is.
Yeah, the key, there's a couple things to do. Releasing water might get you there or it might not. The source of phosphorus to the watershed, the tributaries,
Is a bigger deal.
and you need to get a better because that's most of the water coming in is tributary and storm drain. You need to start to identify where those solutions can be put in place in the watershed. And that's more than just sampling where it comes out of the lake, it's
Mhm.
sampling up within the drain system itself. And then assessing the sediment and taking a look at the phosphorus concentration in that sediment. If it's average or below average, it's probably not a lot of the problem in the internal recycling. Because the thing I look at when I look at phosphorus internal recycling is how concentrated is the sediment and how big of an area goes anoxic during the summer. If you go to 6 meters and that's where it starts to get anoxic, but not much of the lake is deeper than 6 meters, there's only a very small area that's that deep
Mhm.
that is contributing anoxic, phosphorus-rich water to the whole lake. So it's not a big problem.
Yeah.
It might be a big problem locally, but it's, when you mix it with the whole volume of the lake, it's not huge. On the converse of that is fixing that is real easy because you don't have to treat phosphorus over the whole bottom of the lake. You just have to treat a small area and you fix that problem. So with an alum treatment, if you're familiar with that, it binds with the phosphorus.
Right,
and basically stops that cycling from happening. So if you only have to treat a 20-acre area instead of a 200-acre area,
Right.
it's cheap. It's cheap and it will last you 20 years. So it's it's a good, but it's only, like I say, if it's a small area, it's only a small part of your problem.
So,
The source of the problem, and there's no problem here, I shouldn't say that. The concern is the water coming in and the quality of that water coming in. And that's where I would put my effort first.
a large majority of that is coming in from a swamp,
And a wetland, yeah.
which has got, plenty of
Mhm.
eutropia
So,
going on there and so forth.
Yeah.
So you put up a big alum filter or how do you?
so we do that. We actually have a lake in Worcester that we're treating the water flowing into the lake with an alum drip. It basically has a station that when the water flow kicks on, the drip starts, they have a tank and it basically releases alum to the water when it storm flows. And then when it stops storm flow, and they fill up the tank once the tank empties, and then at the end of the year. So that's a system, it's automated, there's an app for it, and you can track when it turned on, and you can adjust the rate of flow of the alum and everything else. It's very sophisticated. But City of Worcester has quite a bit of money to do these types of things. The other place that one of those is located in New England is in Wellesley, which also has plenty of money.
They have a few bucks.
Well, and it's just a population, they have, and it's part of their water supply system, it's where they have town wells near the lake, and they said, well, we want our water near our wells to be really good, so they wanted to clean it up. Next slide. So this is sort of the end message, how do we keep the lake so nice? We know we like it, it's nice, good water clarity. Monitoring it annually, tracking your algae and nutrients, address the stormwater runoff quality like we talked about. Continue to develop BMPs and manage land with quality best management practices for infiltrating stormwater and runoff. It's gonna stay not excessively weedy if you continue to monitor annually, search for new exotics. If you get one, take care of it right away. Yeah, that's sort of that second message. And then it's not mucky, partly it's because you don't have a lot of algae and plant growth that decay every year and settle to the bottom. But also it's that 6-foot winter drawdown that causes the soft sediments and the fine sediments to sort of move down the slopes of your lake and towards the middle. It's called sediment focusing. And that's when you get wave action as your lake drops. It picks up that sediment and shifts it down to the bottom of the lake. Next slide. I think we're getting
Can I
close.
ask a question, quick one?
Oh,
On the
absolutely.
non-excessively weedy part, we have native species, but we have native species that are more dramatically present than they were 8 to 10 years ago. Some of them, one of them may not have been here. I think we've always had some tape grass, but tape grass has gotten, that you described, it puts up the little tape with a flower at the top in August or whatever. That's much more widespread and
Tape grass is easy to fix.
becoming a nuisance, okay. The other is, I think, the clasping pondweed, because I think that 6 years before it was first noticed, I think about 6 or 7 years ago. And since then, it's gone, completely around the lake, and the motorboat props are cutting it off and so forth, and it will become a problem in a number of the recreational swimming areas, private homes in the next few years, the way it's
Yeah,
develops, because it seems to create a bed.
sure. Well, both of those plants and any pondweed that drops seed, they both drop seeds. And when you do a drawdown, you're actually enhancing or encouraging seed forming plants to grow. So the reason you have clasping leaf and tape grass doing quite well and expanding coverage is because of the drawdown. So the drawdown enhances those plants.
But the drawdown then freeze does not get rid of them.
Does not, because they drop seeds and they grow every year
So
from seed.
the drawdown is moving the seeds around and planting them in the door.
Well, the seeds move around because the beds are there, but they take hold in areas where the drawdown has kept clear or free of plants. Because the drawdown occurs, those seeds then settle in those areas and can spring back the next year with new plants.
So what's the best way just to?
So,
What can you do?
so there's different things you can do. You can hit it with an herbicide, which is one option. The option that might be better, given how limited the amount of tape grass and clasping leaf is a much more abundant plant, but tape grass, for instance, if you cut off those stalks before they drop their seed and collect them, you've essentially stopped the seed formation. So the plants will keep coming back, but they won't drop new seeds and they won't spread to other areas of the lake, if that's something you want to tackle.
When do you do that, though?
You do that before they drop their seeds, so typically August, early August.
Is that with the clasping pondweed or with the two?
It's with all of them. The
With
problem, the challenge is it's really easy to look at tape grass because you see those spiraling things
Yeah.
coming up. And there's actually this little cutter that you hook onto the back of your boat, and it's like a set of scissors, and you can go in and cut those and they'll just settle to the bottom. Before the seeds form, they form after they've broken the surface.
Do you take the spirals out?
You can, or you can just let them settle to the bottom.
Really?
Yeah, if you get them before the seeds form, every
It
year.
reseeds every year, so
Yeah.
that this year's plant will not.
Now, they'll still overwinter. So the roots will overwinter. They won't spread their coverage to new areas without having new seed formation.
So
So
what we will be doing is basically
keeping it status
stopping
quo.
proliferation, not necessarily eradicating.
So I walked around the lake in the red area on Route 87 where you showed a lot of dense plant growth.
Mhm,
It's all clasping pondweed.
mhm.
And with the drawdown, there's a fair amount on the town beach also. That's the
Mhm.
second area. Could you, with permission, obviously, rake that out?
You could, yeah. It's a little more work, but sure.
It at least will
Minimize.
become less dense
You
Would it
mean
be harmful to
rake
rake
down before or after the drawdown?
after the drawdown.
So right
Because it's
together.
there, you can see it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I get you, I was just
So-
clarifying.
Yeah,
Woodland Terrace.
so Mary, the challenge with that is the clasping leaf, by the time you get to the drawdown, the clasping leaf has dropped its seeds from this year.
Okay.
So if you're gonna rake it out, you wanna rake it out
Just before.
before it gets to seed formation, and you can,
That's what
So
I-
you
if
get
you
a
pull these
water rate.
plants out, you'll see these like little pods.
Because
essentially,
otherwise, all you're
seeds.
doing is growing tilling for the seeds.
Right, we're just
Right.
still,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
fertilizer, yeah.
So
That's a good
that's the
point.
challenge with those, and so
You got
you
water
can-
leaks.
you know,
Right.
another approach is to go out with an actual harvester and harvest, where you cut the plant, harvest the biomass and haul it away. And that's expensive and it's messy in that it doesn't just target the plants you want, it targets all the plants. It pulls up things that go with the plants, like sometimes turtles, frogs, fish, etc. Doesn't always, and generally they mostly move away. But if you have dense beds of plants, they just get caught up and go with it. Generally, the workers
I'm not sure we're there yet.
pull those out. No, I don't think you're there yet, and I think the, everyone's perception of their lake is different based on what the lake has been in the past. And so that's the challenge every lake group has. My folks, I grew up on a lake, my folks live on a lake. They're like, when 40 years ago, it was fantastic, you could see 40 feet down, and now you can only see 20 feet down, and they're miserable. And so that's the nature of lakes. all of the lakes in New England, everywhere, they age, they over time fill in, nutrients accumulate, they don't go out. Lakes aren't natural, the natural course is for the lake to become a wetland over time, ages, geological time. So we're combating that, and so your challenge as a group managing the lake is to say, well, how much can we live with? How much of that fight do we want to take on? And how much do we want to spend to keep it like it is, or to go the other way, make it cleaner or back to what it used to be? And that's a function of money. You know, it's really, if you've got the money, I'd say do it. If you want to prioritize, you have to then say, well, okay, we have a pot of money. How do we spend that money? Are we going to do plants, or are we going to tackle storm drains? Or do we worry about the algae blooms, or do we worry about the plants? The funny thing is if you clean up the algae, you're gonna get more plants. Because the lake gets to the bottom in deeper areas, so that little ring of plants will actually get deeper because the water's clearer. Your lake's so clear that that's not a big issue, but there's other lakes that on that sigmoid curve, they're up there and we clean up their lake, they're all happy, and then 2 years later, they're like, we need to do a weed treatment. I'm like, yeah, this is what happens. So it's an ongoing battle, and in some lakes, you know, I work with lakes out on the vineyard, Martha's Vineyard, and they want to do nothing. And I'm like, nothing? They're like, no, its natural course is to become a wetland. Let's let it become a wetland. And of course, the residents all around are screaming, but the Conservation Commission, that's what they look, well, why should we get involved? Let's just let nature take its course. And, you know, the argument there is, well, lightning strikes are natural too. I mean, if the town gets struck by lightning, you just let it take its course, or are you gonna put out the fire, you know? So you have to make those decisions as someone who's a keeper of the lake and managing the lake. What are our priorities? How are we gonna focus the future management efforts and the money that we spend? And, you know, if you're happy with it now, try to keep it that way. And the key thing is keep invasive plants out, because once you get an invasive in, dreadful. This lake will go from wonderful to terrible very quickly. And the native plants that you have cover bottom area that prevent native or invasive plants from settling and landing and growing and establishing, because there's already plants growing in the areas that grow plants, and they compete or outcompete the invasives that might come in. If you create empty space by putting in herbicide, now that empty space has a chance of being colonized first by an invasive species.
But don't the problem with invasives are that they're aggressive, and so they'll eventually outcompete plant that's there.
Once they get established, but they can't get established if there's no bottom area for them to become established on.
So if,
So most lakes that get invasives have a boat ramp that allows people to bring in new species, and they have problems with algae that they go in and they treat the algae and now make it clearer because they put in copper to kill the algae. Well, now the summer is open, they have a boat ramp, and now invasives start getting in, and the invasives can grow from the bottom in the spring where it's, you know, relatively clear water. And then by summer, when the algae is getting back, they grow to the surface and they get all their sunlight from the surface, and any natives that were under there can't grow. It just basically creates a canopy, and the invasives are fantastic at shading out and growing across the surface. And the natives generally grow on the bottom, and as they get taller, they get less dense and less, they're sort of like Christmas tree shaped, in that there's more density at the bottom. Invasives are the opposite. They tend to be narrow at the bottom and canopy out like a rainforest. You know, canopy very full at the top, and you don't want, it's not good for swimming, it's not good for fish, it's not good for boating, and it kills all your natives.
we do have a species now that tends to peak just about the 4th of July. And there are clumps of it where it comes up in probably 4 to 6 feet of water and creates a surface mat. And it's a you know, a vascular plant as opposed to algae, so it's not the classic.
Yeah, it's probably the Nigella or the muskgrass or the
Uh,
stonewort.
And again, that wasn't doing that maybe 15 years ago. So are these things happening now because of the fact that there's more phosphorus on the bottom and the sediments for them to be able to do that?
Not necessarily, it could be there's more boat traffic now than there used to be, and so they get disturbed and the boat prop wash causes these things to float, get
Well, I don't
washed
think
out
these are floating. I think these are.
on the bottom.
Yeah, all rooted from the bottom. They get cut off by the wind of the waves. They could be only, I see them in the morning rowing at, between 5:30 and 6:30 before there's really any wind and before there's any
Yeah.
wave. But once it comes up, you won't see it on the surface anymore. It may be there, but it's probably the waves are hiding it, and then a prop comes along and cuts it off.
You should sleep in, then you won't see them.
Well,
I'm just being flip. I don't know what plant we're talking about, so I
Yeah,
can't really
yeah.
tell you which one.
if we want to, we want.
I gotta, my daughter's out.
Okay.
In the hall, so I got,
So,
we're coming from a hockey game. She played in, down in Hamden, and I was on my way back. And then she's got school tomorrow, so I got, next slide if we can.
It's not,
Good.
That's it.
I think we were pretty close. I think the last slide was maybe my final year, thank you slide. So,
oh, there we go.
all right, recommendations, those aren't important.
yeah,
There.
thank you.
Recommendations, just continue on monitoring. I would recommend you start in May. If we can next year, map the plants in August the same. Storm drain assessment should be done and within the watershed if you've got the money to do it. And if you want to save some money, you could probably drop the nitrogen assessment within the lake to once per year and save some money that way because it's the same. Surface, bottom, all the months, there's not a lot of variability and it's more of a, let's look at it once a year. And because you're doing nitrate, nitrite and TKN and total nitrogen, it's like 3 or 4 tests worth
Lab
of,
tests, yeah.
you'll save probably $50 a sample that way. Times surface, bottom, inlet, outlet,
And what month would you
and
suggest?
5 months, so it's probably gonna save you a couple, $1,500.
So my question is, when would that month be that you?
August,
August.
yeah. And then sediment sampling, just doing it once every 5 years for phosphorus to get a read on what it is and then, you do it every year, you're not gonna see a trend, it's gonna be just noise. But if you do it now and 5 years from now, you can then say, oh, is it the same or has it increased? And that'll give you that answer.
But you've already done the phosphorus, haven't you?
No.
Oh, that's the one modeling that has to be done.
No, I didn't do sampling of phosphorus this year.
Okay.
It was, I think, taken out.
If we were to prioritize based on what I see, I heard, Carl, I would think we should prioritize phosphorus coming into the lake. If people are concerned with the plants as a nuisance, it would seem that local harvesting efforts before they bloom and are in the swimming area would be potentially beneficial at the risk, though, of putting out a welcoming mat for invasive
Right.
species.
Yeah,
That's it. That's what I took for notes on, yeah. Good synopsis.
you can also, there's
Gate
other things,
monitoring would be a good thing too.
you can use a bottom barrier, which is,
Monitoring it at the boat launch, accurately.
Correct.
and if you start to coordinate these people,
Yes,
where
geese for sure.
more than one
That's part
person
of
is
the
doing
phosphorus.
Yeah, the
something, you'll
gates
start
are
to.
important ones.
What were we saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
Sort you out.
He's COVID?
That is code?
Well, that's
great.
Oh, let's give Henry's code away.
I think this is his bag.
Is that his bag?
I think so, instead of home there, I don't know. He hasn't gone yet.
You need your bag. Oh, thank goodness.
Thank you.
I wanna have fun, you know? Keep phone, phone.
Okay. Minutes of last meeting, any additions, edits?
Michael, before we go, we have audience of citizens and I need to know who it is.
He's not an audio, you're here for a permit, right?
Right.
Yeah, so,
Oh, and that is who, and,
Jim Blair.
Jim,
oh, God. I
Jim
didn't
Blair,
even
17
recognize you.
Lincoln Avenue.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Jim.
Don't worry.
so I was trying to get to permits, so we're in. We're in time now.
I was wondering who that kid was doing all the work.
All right, so minutes of last meeting, any adjustments, deletions, edits, additions?
Would we accept?
Move, we have a motion, we have a second. Second, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay,
Just,
Oh,
I'm sorry, I missed
Bob.
conclusion, but we'll follow up next month on conclusions and the priorities that have been suggested. For,
oh, sure.
just
Do
so,
you wanna, we'll put that in new business,
yeah, make a note for new business.
including new business, follow-ups.
There's gonna be a written report too, right?
A written
Yes.
report is coming, and I have a copy of the presentation. I'll send it out to you.
Oh, no, yeah, good.
Thank you. It was very informative.
Yeah, he was great. He was great.
And it's down to common sense level, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of, there's good scientific data, but then common sense, what are the things we should be considering? So
Yep,
I think we've made some progress.
absolutely, thank you. So he was our guest. No audience of citizens, any communications? All right, and now we are on to permits. So we have, Jim, do you want to introduce what you got?
Sure. Jim Blair, and asking for a permit to rebuild the lake wall at 9 Sleepy Hollow, which is the home of Joel Gorosick and Amy, I forget Amy's last name now, where is my phone? Amy and Joel, and so this is like the, and I did turn in a map,
Oh, okay.
site plan, but that's the old, that's the, from his property,
So has there been a formal permit submitted?
yeah,
Okay, or an
Yeah.
application. not permitted.
I have it.
Oh, you have?
Steve Harrington did the site visit already.
I mean, I turned it into town hall like you're supposed to.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
You guys didn't get it?
No, you
I
got
wouldn't
it.
get it.
No, I didn't, nobody
No, it
got
must
it.
be the Bob.
That's why Mark called today to see if we had it.
Yeah,
So,
Jennifer sent it,
all right, so
and we were all,
this is what I drew, and it really just matches what's going on here. So what the desire of the homeowner is to reconfigure the wall, to straighten it out, property point to property point. So on this, if you're facing the lake, Drummond is his neighbor, to the right, and the other side is Tooker. So, anyways, so there's a corner here and there's a corner there, the dock's, roughly, over the middle. So the wall presently kind of does this weird sort of meandering kind of thing, and then comes in, and Joel said it's sort of like somebody took a bite out of the lake. It's kind of weird, and I guess I understand why they did it. There's a big rock there, so they just kind of built around that, and that's your way into the lake. So Joel's desire is to straighten that out, make it a little more orderly and neat, and the wall has to be redone anyways, in my estimation, because first of all, it's low. So the dock, and I do have pictures on an iPad too, I can show everybody, but the dock is about the height of what the wall should be, in my opinion. It's about a foot over high water mark. That's typically where we are unless there's unusual circumstances. We're usually around a foot or so. It seems to be the average. And then unless, again, your bank is higher or what have you, different lots have different, characteristics. So anyways, we would be higher because the wall is being topped, wake action, et cetera, and even just high water. And so the wall is old, built, not to what I would build to my standards, where I would have a sheet of filter fabric and some 3/4 inch crushed stone behind all that. And that kind of stops the fine materials from coming. So the lake, you know, the water's coming through there anyway, it doesn't matter. But we won't want to take the bank with it back into the lake. That adds, you know, just creates a problem, you know, immediately for the lake. And then secondly, really, yeah, it makes it a lot unsafe, you know, and, you know,
So-
your area behind the walls. No.
2 comments, Jimmy.
Yeah,
Number one, wetlands has already approved this,
Mhm.
and I was not on the official site visit, but I did my own site visit. I know the Morozics, I've been to the property 1,000 times. Number two, Steve Harrington did a site visit, and Steve's on. And I think the only hiccup or issue, which I don't believe it is, was when the wall's being straightened versus this meandering. There is some building of the wall into the lake bed, and some you're actually moving it back off the lake bed.
quite a bit.
And I think Steve can speak to this, but I asked Joel Morozic to tell me where his property lines were. And when you measure the property lines, that should be going into the lake bed to straighten it out. So it could have been erosion, the wall's 80 years old, but I don't see any issues with encroaching a little bit on the lake bed in some areas. In some areas, they're actually gonna move it back, according to Joel.
So,
Am I correct?
and I'm speaking.
We put up a string line that day that I did the site visit with Jim. And it was considerably more real estate coming off the lake bed than going onto the lake bed. I would say it was probably 30 or 40 square feet getting added to the space and ×2 coming off.
So I'm not following that. That's basically saying that more land's being created than lake, or more lakes being
South.
created. than
More
land?
land being created to lake than property. There's like an indent. It almost looks like they're, you know, it would have been a staircase or something. It's maybe an 8-foot wide space that goes in, say, 3 feet into the wall towards the land side. But then when you strike where the new wall face is going to be, you actually are adding to the lake as opposed to adding to the land in total area.
We've been totally strict all along on the fact that the lake edge has to be the lake edge. And we haven't allowed anybody else to add land to their property or to take it away. And I think this is a slippery slope and a dangerous precedent.
I will make,
Good bait.
I will make an exception, Carmen Dances, we did allow that.
Well, we did allow that because she proved that it had been there
Correct.
before that way.
And when you measure the property of the Morozics, where the property line, some is, must have been erosion because the property line's into the lake bed. Whereas the property line in some of it is not into the lake bed, so you're adding and subtracting, you're right.
Yeah, so just kind of cutting to the chase. It's, I measured, let me get to my notes here exactly. So area that would be filled is approximately 4.5 feet and about 11 to 12 feet. And that's kind of hard to judge because it's a little bit longer in some spaces, but then there's huge rocks on the bottom that jut into it that make that space shorter. And then the area to be given back is about 24 feet from the property line to the right, coming up to the dock, and including where the dock is sitting now, about 1 foot to 1.5 foot. So right there, I think you're just about break even. You know, we're about 24 or so. And then on the other side, I've got 70 square feet, which that really juts out. And again, it's kind of this odd thing that sticks out into the water, the way they built the wall. And so that's 70, so the 70 and the 20, I mean, we're getting back quite a bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. And also the lake, the edge of the water, I understand that point, but this is the property line. We're not asking to go beyond the property line, we're asking to build a wall to the property line, and the wall exists on that property line presently, except for one area.
Well, am I confused about the line around the lake? I thought that my property line went to high water mark. Is that correct?
Your
Some
property,
property lines go into the lake.
some go into the lake,
Yeah.
and some don't.
So,
This
so, I
property-
mean, we have guidelines, right?
Correct.
Have those guidelines been reviewed and pertaining to this?
I don't think we have a
Into this
guideline
application.
specific to the property line.
We,
That's what I was
Well,
asking.
okay,
Yeah,
but,
yeah, we do, because when I did my wall, I was told I couldn't go further out, or I had to maintain even with my existing current wall, so.
Okay, well, I believe the guideline, whether it's in writing or not, it should certainly include, where's the property?
They wouldn't even allow me to put it.
there's nothing, there's no, unless we're gonna change the guideline, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, I couldn't put steps in because it wasn't allowed to take that land.
Right,
So
you
that
can't
was an
come in.
example of where I was,
Yeah, you can't come into the lake.
so,
But you can go back.
again,
no, I mean,
just,
So,
this is.
so what are the
something that-
options? Are the options build it to it where it is?
Well, this-
What does, have you read the guidelines? What's that?
I say, that's what, I think we need to look at the guidelines.
I think we, need, you know, I mean, that's what we have them for, right? So.
Well, let's read them. I don't have my computer.
Well, I have them here. So A, all seawalls shall be securely attached to the land of the applicant and so be designated in construction to prevent erosion into the lake. Only environmentally approved materials, that's seawall construction shall follow the contour of the shoreline.
So what does that tell us?
That's,
The contour of the shoreline is the circuitous route.
that's correct.
Irregardless of where the property line is.
That's what,
Yeah, because some people have property lines in the middle of the lake. I don't know how the property line,
the property line in this particular instance was a reference point, we're pulling the wall back to that spot. It's just a reference, and it's to straighten it out, and we're following that because that's the shortest distance and made the most sense.
Mike, can you read that again, exactly what it says, please?
Provision 6, item C, is seawall construction shall follow the contour of the shoreline.
That's pretty general. But if that's the rule,
I
or
don't
the
know.
guideline.
But I mean, we've done this this has been approved throughout the years. I've had several instances. And I understand with the stairs we're asking for the stairs to go into the lake because they presently do. And so we want to maintain that, but make them better. They're not safe the way they are. They're the age of the wall, 50-something years old. And, you know, again, it's not, I don't think it's a measurable. I don't know. We've done this before. It's been approved by this board and by other boards, you know, and it's not the first time that I've ever had something like this come up. And it's a give to get thing. We never ask for more. You can't build out into the lake. I understand that. And my customers, I make sure that property owners understand that. We don't ask for something that's so outside, you know, and outlandish. We're not gonna, no, we can't build the wall out further. But I mean, if you really look at the space, it's not really a usable space. There's boulders in there right now. It's just kind of a weird thing that somebody felt compelled to build around for whatever reason.
So where would
let's-
the boulders go in the new
Well,
configuration?
okay. We're getting off, can we finish provision 4, just so we can understand that we're operating from data?
But these are guidelines.
Okay, that's fine.
You have some give and take to guidelines.
Fair enough, what I'm saying is we start, if there's any question to the permit application, we go to the guidelines. first.
Correct.
Fair enough?
Yes,
Okay. Applicants shall not extend and or backfill their property behind the seawall except to the level required to complete construction. Okay, so does this do that?
I would say yes.
So you're meeting that guideline? Is that what you're saying, or you're saying you're going to do something different?
I wouldn't do anything different, I don't think.
Well, applicants shall not extend and or backfill their property behind the seawall except to the level required to complete construction.
That's just kind of,
That's.
Applicants shall, I'm
So-
trying to understand this one myself. so-
Yeah, how do you not?
Applicants
backfill?
shall not extend and or backfill their property behind the seawall except to the level required to complete construction.
So if we build a wall, if I build the wall to the foot high, you know, foot higher than what it presently is, or whatever elevation I am asking for. And behind that, we would not
go 2 feet.
backfill above that, so we
Right.
created a,
Yeah, it's a height
So you
issue.
put in the stone.
It's a height, you think it's a height issue?
It's a height issue, because we have to stay level.
Okay.
Okay, so that
It's a
doesn't,
height issue.
Seawalls shall not present any hazard to persons using the lake.
You're thinking of that.
You're good with that?
New or replacement seawalls shall not be higher than 30 inches above the base water level.
that's typical.
Repaired seawalls shall follow the current location as nearly as possible. Several points along the lake wall shall be triangulated to fixed points to verify compliance to this section. LMAC will determine the methods used to accomplish this provision during the application review.
So when approved, we make sure they do what we say they.
No, that's
saying
not,
you
that's
gotta
not.
follow the existing law.
Well, it's, okay, well, it doesn't say that, well,
No, it's
okay, let's say it again. Repaired seawalls shall follow the current location as nearly as possible.
Okay,
Several points along the lake shall be triangulated to fixed points to verify compliance to this section. LMAC will determine the methods used to accomplish this provision during application review. So what it's saying is that, you know, if there's a house in the corner of the house, if you pull a line,
I'm trying.
it basically, this is about the method to establishing where the current location is. And that the repaired seawalls shall follow the current location as nearly as possible.
So as nearly as possible, be taken
Leaves a
into
little gray.
consideration here? Is that
Well,
what, is that what we're
that's
saying?
why
Yeah,
I'm not saying anything other than what's in
Yeah.
black and white right here. That's why I'm trying to go to the guideline.
Well,
and
from my
use the guideline.
experience, Mike, they would triangulate off of a home or a structure.
Right, exactly.
To say, this is where the old wall was, this is where the new one needs to be, you
Right.
can't exceed that dimension.
right,
and vice versa.
You
right.
gotta follow the old law, basically, unless there's a reason.
Right, and that the points need to be verified off of existing structures on the property to determine where that is. Okay. But the first sentence here is repaired seawalls shall follow the current location as nearly as possible.
Okay.
Are we incorporating any steps?
yes.
Okay, applicants seeking to have steps incorporated into a seawall will design the steps to lead back into the applicant's property and not extend into the lake.
So there are existing steps that go into the lake that are part of that original wall, so I would ask that I'm allowed to build steps into the lake
In the location that they're currently in.
currently in.
It's currently the location.
Okay, so basically
That's
that,
grandfather.
yeah, that's grandfathered in and that complies here. Do we have cuts or openings? Cuts or openings in seawalls, including cuts or openings for ramps or steps, will be no greater than 4 feet wide. No cut or opening that does not provide for it to be filled with an impervious or other erosion preventing surface will be allowed. So that's if you had a cut going through the wall. Are there any cuts going through, existing cuts going through the wall?
So that ridiculous area that we want to fill in, I'm calling that a cut.
Well, is it an
It's not a
actual?
cut, it's a full seawall there. It's just like a
Yeah.
cube
cut-
into the
A
seawall,
cut,
but it
yeah,
has,
a cut is an actual
Right,
separation.
it's just-
Yeah, that's not a, okay,
So there's the boulder,
yeah,
you know, and they just, I don't know why they didn't just go there.
yeah,
Anyways,
okay, fair enough,
that's it.
okay. Permit applications seeking to add a decorative fascia or veneer to the front of an existing seawall may be considered with the following conditions. All right, so we're not adding any decorative fascia or veneer.
No.
Okay. Properties whose shoreline have a grandfathered sand interface. That here, there's no sand interface with.
But in other words, he has a beach.
there's
Does it have a
none.
beach? No, okay. Okay, so. So item C is up to discussion. Seawall construction shall follow the contour of the shoreline. D, applicants shall not extend or backfill their property behind the seawall except to the level required to complete construction.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah,
Mike, I believe the back of this seawall, maybe Jim could show a picture. The back of the seawall where it hits the earth, I believe fairly straight. The seawall itself gets thicker from the earth to the front of the seawall with stone.
okay,
So if we have a practical side here and you make the seawall the same width, I think you would see that it would be a nice straight looking seawall as opposed to having this fat side, if you will, on the left, and then that indentation, and then a fairly straight wall the rest of the way.
but I think, well, from what are we talking about the wall?
What I'm
dimension?
saying, top of the seawall on the left side of the yard is like, maybe Jim, you could show the picture, but I
Yeah.
believe, if my memory serves me right, it's stone like 5 or 6 feet wide is the cap of the wall.
Yeah, I see it, yep,
So if you, that's a seawall. So if we're
Yeah.
talking about following the earth, if you will, as opposed to the man-made wall, it is pretty straight.
Including the indent?
So if you build a normal size, say a 2-foot wide seawall, kind of straight up the middle, you're gonna get a nice straight seawall that follows the earth.
Is there an application that we can look at as a group? I mean, part of our charter is to review these before.
I don't have a copy of the application with me. I really am shocked.
Why wouldn't we have that, at least so all parties here can be looking at the discussion we're having on the screen right now? I haven't seen a photo, I looked it up myself here, because I'm hooked up to the entrance.
Yeah, I just,
In fairness to the rest of the committee, I think you ought to re-present this at a later date, but give us an opportunity to look at the application before we have this kind of discussion. Otherwise, we're just spinning our wheels.
well, I appreciate that, but from my perspective, I handed this in a timely fashion to get it on this agenda. Why?
when was it handed in?
It was
enough
handed
time to
a while ago. I don't know why you guys don't have it.
No, I just, what
Steve,
day?
I had it too, let me look it up.
When does it say, in the regulations about amending them?
Yeah, can we come over and look at it too? Can we come over and lay eyes on it? Would you object to that?
No, I don't think so, but Yeah,
I'm trying to help.
no, that's fine. No, and I appreciate that.
I mean, I'd come tomorrow for you.
Well, I don't know if that does
Really
me any
don't know
good.
why
but-
everybody doesn't have that.
November 2nd,
God,
November 2nd?
yeah. Good afternoon, let me tell you who got it. Steve, Mary, Bob, Dave, Henry, Mike, and Phyllis all got this email on
Well, I did not get it.
November 2nd at 3 something in the afternoon.
I didn't
No.
receive it.
I didn't get it.
No,
But my name's not even on
this
it,
went to
so.
the subcommittee.
Oh,
This went to the subcommittee. The
Oh.
subcommittee gets it first.
yeah.
And then Steve goes to site visit or asks Jimmy or I or Dave to do site visits when he's not available. So,
Yeah, well, Mark called me today and asked me if I had it, and I said, no, I don't have it. I don't know why I don't have it.
okay, you're on here, but
Yeah,
On the second,
November
I
2nd.
have plenty of other permits and other things for here. I do not have, anything from the second.
You submitted it on October 27th. I will forward this to everyone.
What's the subject on the,
Oops.
Joe versus John Rosa, Canamy World, 9 Sleepy Hollow Road.
okay, so Sleepy is in the,
Let's see. Nova Rosa, Canadian World, 9 Sleepy Hollow. Thank you. You have it?
There we go. Oh,
here we go.
What's this? This the one pager?
I just sent a screenshot to your phones, to the few cell phones I had.
Yeah, I found it, I got it now.
When do you want to start this?
Well,
Mike, what does it
it would be
say
this season.
about
I know,
amending?
but can
Because I think we should
you defer
amend
to
the
January?
regulation
Do you start in January or you
to
want to start in
say
December?
that
2 weeks before the holidays.
seawalls can go to the property boundary line or, and then,
Well, that could be a problem.
Well, wait a minute, okay,
but that.
I appreciate the spirit of what we're trying to do here, but, you're talking about, you really want to go there? Because there are properties right now that have,
Property that goes,
Well,
it goes into,
Yeah, well, part of the problem also with that, I agree with that. Part of the problem is that even though the property lines go there, the town's got a claim that by adverse possession or by failure to pay tax or whatever else, that the property line is the high water mark. So, and the town,
It's-
nobody's paid the legal expense to try to resolve those issues, basically.
So again, just to reiterate, I hope I did not misspeak or mislead. We're just using the property line as a straight line as a reference. It works out, I think it works out to the advantage of the property owner, to have it look and function better. And, that's all. It was gonna be a straight line. We could even move it. I think he was talking about going back further, and I said, well, you want to at least, don't go back so far, because once you go back, that's it. So
what are you gonna do with the boulder?
the boulder, if I'm not moving that, it's staying there, we just go around it.
now, what I'm looking at here is
You would be moving it, so I'm hearing.
the steps,
I don't know if I would put the effort into it.
the steps go into the property, they don't stick out beyond the wall.
They,
Well, at least, what I'm looking at here on the permit is,
oh, I didn't draw it like that.
what's that?
That's,
you can't say it.
the location of the stairs, because that's where they are now, but here's where they go out. That shot here.
Well, I mean, that needs to be included in the permit.
Yeah.
You can't, if you're gonna be putting stairs, like, are you gonna be putting them out here beyond the wall?
We do 5 feet or 15.
15 feet.
Well,
30 feet.
but you gotta show that. You can't, because if we approve this right now, that's where the stairs go.
Yeah, so this is where the stairs are, and it's about
I hear you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just telling you right now, if you ask us to approve this right now, that's where the stairs go. They go into the property. They don't go out beyond. So you're
Based on
saying,
Jim's drawing,
what's that?
based on Jim's drawing.
Based on Jim's drawing, it's in the permit.
So if we have a motion to approve this with amendment to ensure the stairs remain right where they're supposed to remain. Can you do that, Jim? That's what you're, yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna go.
Yeah.
Beyond, and I can
And
furnish
you're
and
gonna
amend
keep
the
them there
drawing.
because they're grandfathered.
Yeah, well, they're not grandfathered,
Why are they not?
because they are currently into the property.
Now he wants to move
Now,
them into the lake.
so I just wanna, Jim, I wanna draw this out.
No, I don't know, I don't understand what you're saying.
Mike, the stairs go into the lake.
Go into the lake.
They go,
Yeah, but
They go-
someone said here before that they were gonna go out into the lake. Are they gonna go out like this, Jim?
they're currently
Yeah.
there.
Well, yeah, and then whatever, it's about 4 feet, and in that particular spot, the wall ends up being, I wanna say about 42 inches or so, which translates into 6 steps. So there, I would go, that's the 4 feet that I would go out.
You're gonna go,
Beyond
I'm
the face of
sorry,
the wall.
yeah, so you wanna go out here.
Yeah,
Okay, but that is in direct conflict with what I was just reading.
but if it's there, we can do, it already is there.
He's just drawn it wrong, Mike.
He just drew it.
And this is the picture that shows the wall and the steps coming into the lake. So it's a grandfather.
You're not changing the steps.
I'm just putting, I'm
Those are-
formalizing and making them safe.
Those are steps?
Yeah, they look.
They're all, that's some, the reason why I took the picture out there is cement, it's all cemented together. And that cement is
You
old.
mean
Together, they're
more-
definitely
Yeah.
steps. I went on them.
I mean, they're already there.
Yeah,
So are they gonna be any wider than this?
they're 4 foot wide.
That's not 4 foot wide.
You're telling me from here to here is 4 feet?
I think if you go, that was actually part of it. I don't know.
This is a tape measure right there. Based on that tape measure, that's not 4 feet, because 4 feet's all the way out to here. The beginning of the tape.
Well, that's just from the wall. That's where the base of the wall.
Right, but, okay, so if that's 4 feet, then that doesn't appear to be 4 feet.
I think I got it at the base of the wall.
Is there another photo showing these stairs?
Hey, Mike,
Yeah,
I don't believe those stairs are 4 feet wide. I think they're closer to 3. I didn't measure them. I should have. But they're I don't believe they're 4 feet wide.
okay, so we're grandfathering 3 foot wide stairs with 4 feet wide stairs, or what are we doing?
I would say we're grandfathering with the stairs or whatever width they are, they have to be verified after we approve what the width is.
Correct.
You know, it's what's there, we're
That's
verifying, and we just need to, as LMAC,
Yeah.
measure it so we know we can compare it to what gets built.
Okay,
Hey, Jim Blair,
yeah,
I have an idea.
sure.
How about you build the stairs into the wall where that depression is in the wall on the other side? And build a complete set of stairs.
That would be up to the homeowner and,
Saying it would be something that you could do. I mean, there's plenty of area on both sides there. It's an option that you could meet the compliance
Because that,
and then just have the
that's
steps.
exactly what you're saying, where I drew the green,
yeah, it's about 4 feet out, yeah.
you're saying that is that.
Well, I'm not gonna make myself look stupid. I didn't measure that, but no, it's whatever it is, it is. I don't have a firm measurement on that right now. I only measured from the base of the wall.
I didn't measure the stairs either. I didn't think of it. I just saw the steps there.
What's that measurement?
From the existing.
Why
wall.
don't you put that measurement in the drawing? What is that? How many feet?
80 feet, I thought it was somewhere, I don't know, they're on it.
Depth.
There's not a lot of detail on the drawing, the drawing should be more specific with dimensions and everything else.
All right.
Is this is a 70 to 80-year-old wall, according to Joel.
Yeah,
Is any of this rebuild because there are erosion issues?
has any of it been rebuilt already?
Are there erosion issues on this particular wall?
Oh, yeah, that he's losing the bank from behind.
Okay.
Yeah, the lawn is going down, so that's why I said the wall is too short, especially, you know, on the right side or the left side going towards the water. That wall's high, on the right side, the wall's low, so all that's going, and even over here on the left side where the wall is higher, the water's coming in and eating that from underneath, so that rock thing is kind of hollow, it's finding all over.
Yes.
I bet I can tell you where that rock came from.
And so when we argued, and I was vehemently,
Came from up ahead.
if I may, when we argued Carmen Dances. When we argued Carmen Dances, and I was vehemently against building anything an inch into the lake wall. I had a lengthy discussion with John Valenti. John Valenti showed me other properties, including over by Lake, where, Mike, where you live, where we have done this, when it's proven that erosion has happened. So that's why I finally agreed to approve Carmen Dances, because it went out into the lake wall, there were erosion issues. Is this anything to do with erosion, and therefore you're building out into the lake wall because where this was has eroded? We couldn't prove that Carmen's where the
The
erosion
pictures
was.
show the wall where it is, where the erosion is in the back of the wall. It's not like in Carmen's where the wall fell into the lake
Fell into the lake.
and then it eroded.
No, this is, it's going through the lake wall, it's going down.
The wall is established.
Okay. So can we move to a motion to either approve this or not? And if we do approve it with an amendment to ensure the appropriate dimensions, and if we choose not to approve it, gotta go back to the drawing board and stay with the contour of the lake. Is that where we're at?
Wow, that's a lot of addendums to that motion.
You're what?
That's a lot of addendums to that motion.
No, I know.
Well, I mean, I guess, are we,
Or is it a motion to table?
well, are we, can anybody demonstrate to me how this meets the current guidelines? Because I mean, if it meets the guidelines, then I'm in, but I'm struggling to look at the guidelines and say, yes, this meets the guidelines.
Yeah,
I get the aesthetic and functional
I
improvement,
get that.
I'm
yeah.
all about it, I totally understand. But what I'm trying to do, to Henry's point, is if I'm gonna argue with him,
Yeah,
how am I gonna argue the case to say this meets the guidelines?
Yeah, I don't think it goes from the one that you read because you gotta follow the contour of the shoreline. I think we could make an amendment that deals effectively worded with saying that you could go to an established property line that is, was at one time above water, that goes to the erosion issue or whatever else. But that takes time and, requires Amy and Joe to wait. I think an amendment like that probably doesn't draw the same amount of fire that when we redid all of the regulations, we're just making one simple amendment, making a recommendation to the selectmen, they could adopt it at another meeting and then an application could be approved, but it would be likely meaning that it's a different building site. I think if they want to build it this time around, they're gonna go to the contour.
Mark Walter,
Yeah, Mike.
what are your thoughts on changing the guidelines? What do you think that process would take?
Well, right now, the guidelines are what you're interpreting. as LMAC is a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. From what I'm listening to here, it seems like the applicant is giving more to the lake than he's, it looks like it's a plus for the lake. He's taking the wall and moving it back into his property.
I agree, and I support that 100%, I get it, but that's not in the guidelines. So I'm trying to find a logic stream here or logic path that says, yes, we approve this because.
But I think that guidelines put into place so that people don't take more of the lake.
Fair enough.
Right. I think that's what it's designed for, to keep you from making your lawn bigger.
Fair enough,
Mike,
fair enough. Yeah,
I think that's.
Mike.
Go, Steve.
I see some of the seawalls that are like piles of rubble, not really seawalls, but just kind of
yeah,
stacked, messy, crappy seawalls.
yeah,
Then they take it down and then it's restacked and it's a nice straight edge.
yep,
And it's a give and take on all of those type, because you could have a rock that's sitting there and it's, 18 inches out into the water because it was a pile of rubble. And now it's a nice straight seawall that you've lined up. And now that particular rock is part of the nice flat wall.
Steve, Steve, I get it, and I'm with you 100% on that. I'm just trying to point to the guidelines.
I get it. My point to you is, if you take that existing seawall down,
Yeah,
that rock's gonna come out, and you restack it as a uniform seawall, the left side of that seawall is way wider
yeah,
than the right side. So when you follow take the seawall out, you have a fairly straight line of earth that's the property line. Now you stack a nice neat wall. Somewhere there's gotta be practical here, because
Thank you.
if it would, I'd much rather see a nice straight seawall than a hodgepodge thing that's there.
I think it's a plus for the lake.
I get it, but we don't have,
We don't have this dimension.
Wait, folks, we're getting way out. The term guidelines. Is it black and white? No. I think it gives gray, and I think that's why this committee exists. And the gray that I'm hearing is, it's not harming the lake, and we may even see a little bit of the lake recaptured. It's an old 80-year-old wall. Let's let them rebuild their wall.
okay, so
And
when
I
the
think at
next one
the end of
comes,
the
when the
day,
next
you're gonna
one
be
comes
way
in,
better off.
Will we either amend the guidelines to be strict, or not? Because
Well,
current
no.
advances, we approve.
No, what I'm trying to say here is, when the next one comes in and says, well, you let him do it
Right.
Because
So
it
then-
benefited the lake.
because it benefited the lake, okay, so now we're saying, and I'm with it, I'm just, that there's,
I
if
know.
there's a net gain to the lake, then
The
we're
definition of
okay with it.
contour-
That's not.
The definition of contour is as general as the definition of a guideline. We have to have some judgment around here for us to either say yay or nay.
I get it,
And
But-
some may say yay and some may say nay.
okay, and I'm with you, I
So-
get all of this,
And-
I just can't point to the guidelines, any guideline
Right.
that says, yes, as long as, it's a net gain to the lake, we can,
Well,
we
can
can
you point
adjust.
to a guideline that says no?
Let's look at the dock.
Yes, I can, I just
Yeah.
did.
But can we, we're all having a discussion on limited information.
Well, we might have to go back on the dock.
But
because the dock is-
what's the difference between the existing wall and the new wall? What's that feet number? Is it 5 feet?
Square
Is it 10 feet?
He said he wants to know square feet.
40 square feet.
Is it a
Exactly.
foot? Is it a foot? Where's the old wall?
Yep.
And where's the new one gonna be? How many feet in between? Simple
I thought you
question.
said 40 square feet.
No, I'm not talking 40 square. feet.
So,
How many feet?
that's a good question. Okay, so here's,
That should be in your application. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just sucks too.
Why wouldn't it?
The
You're
dock is
moving-
exactly the
You're
same.
moving the
It's the
existing
same
wall
place.
from A to B. What's that dimension? Simple question.
Please forgive the omission.
What's the answer?
I supplied a scale drawing, and I'm very sorry, but.
Oh, we don't know then. We don't know that.
Then I move, we table this until January. And we ask that the applicant come back with the appropriate dimensions so we can make a decision.
I'm making that maybe we have a meeting
Okay,
sooner
so
than January for
why-
him because of this.
Why?
Why?
Could be the weather.
All right, the holidays are gonna be here. He's not gonna start building till January.
You're not
But
really.
does anybody, I mean,
I'd start probably as soon as I got the permit.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but what's this?
I was just trying to help him.
No, what's this?
I put a motion on the table.
I don't know what that is.
I know, hold on. So there's a motion on the table.
Right,
To table until January, and the applicant returns with the appropriate information that's required for us.
And we have a second.
Yes.
Okay,
Second.
discussion. Jim,
yes, sir,
the line that you have there,
Yeah.
can you, this drawing here, this one,
right.
this is an A1 or A2 survey, this is an actual
No,
certified survey?
I was just given this, I think it was this, I forget what it was for exactly, but I just used that to draw my.
Well, no, this line, but so what I'm asking is this this looks like a certified survey that they've done.
It might have been at one point, yeah.
Okay, can we get dimensions, hard dimensions from the corner of the house?
Yep.
Here to this point?
Yep.
There, and then to there,
Yep,
okay? That's then gonna establish the points of your line?
Yep.
And I wanna
Okay.
see that line on the survey as opposed to one that Jim drew.
Right, well, it is on the survey, he drew it, it's right here, and it's clearly, and just, can you get an exact number
Yes.
of the land that's gonna be reclaimed by the lake? You know, it's not gonna be water, and the land that's gonna be taken,
there is I supplied a letter.
yeah, oh, was it in the letter?
It might be in the letter. I thought I put enough information in the letter that, I understand.
Email you all. We don't have that.
Yeah, I have it,
Did you find it,
but it doesn't,
No, I don't have
it doesn't have any square
Went
footage.
to the other.
And so here's what I'm looking for, is if you can, there's no square footage in here,
Jesus Christmas, yeah.
okay? So, and don't use this drawing,
Right,
use that drawing
right,
and show this as the original dock, that's there.
right,
And you gotta show these steps that are existing and what's, effectively what's gonna go back.
yep,
Because where we're going with this is that this is a new situation. You're now falling under new guidelines that were established 2 years ago. And we need to establish some criteria to say, well, as long as the net gain benefits the lake from a square footage standpoint.
yeah,
That we can grant approval, to do what you wanna do,
right,
because it benefits the lake.
okay,
And I think that's where
And
everybody is headed
That's
here.
that's where we're.
Everybody is headed here, and we don't, since we've rewritten the guidelines. We're now forging new territory here, that,
It's gotta benefit the lake and at least be consistent with the boundary line.
even that, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, well, I think that's very fair. So while whatever's happened in the past has happened in the past, but with new guidelines, we now have to respond to that. And we understand the practical value, the aesthetic value, and the environmental value of what you're proposing. We just need to fit it into the guidelines.
Agreed.
Is everybody?
I also wanna see dimensions on the existing dock and the new dock, because we don't have any.
No, it's the same.
Yeah.
He said that. It's in here.
I'm pretty sure.
And then
They're
this-
not changing.
Existing dock to be replaced in kind.
and I think I gave you, yeah.
You did,
And I gave
it's
you
right
this,
here.
I gave you this, the dock I did do all the dimensions on, because I know that's.
Yeah.
To me, that seemed way more important, it's just a wall from,
So there's a dock as well. that's
Well,
being-
not so on the wall.
Yeah,
There's a dock in the.
and he has it right here. He has it in his permitted.
So
existing dock to be replaced in kind.
what do you mean by replace? Just the surface or the entire dock?
The whole thing's gotta
Yeah,
go.
just
We gotta
replace,
redo it.
which you have every right to do, it's
It's gonna
grandfathered,
rebuild,
it's gonna rebuild,
Yeah.
grandfather in place.
as long as we have the dimensions so we can compare.
Yeah, and
Which he has.
this was part of my permit. that I
Did we vote on the
put
motion?
in. You should have this drawing too.
Yeah.
I have-
Single location, Jim?
There you go.
Well, it's actually, I don't have a section here, but
Why?
I don't know, I'm just telling you, this is what was submitted.
Somebody did, well, no, I submitted this.
Okay, well, either way, this is what I have. So if you could use that A2 survey
Right,
and work off of that
yeah,
However,
and just establish this amount of land will be reclaimed by the lake,
right.
200 square feet, whatever it is, and this amount of land.
But we're not gonna act on this until January.
I think.
Well, that's the motion, we haven't voted yet.
Yeah, I mean, you're now asking us to do something that's not in the guidelines, and so we need time to present a change to the guidelines that we can now move forward with, that we can answer to.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on the dock before we get off the case?
Well, we're still in discussion on the
Yeah.
motion, so,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
The posts themselves, how are they gonna be secured to the ground? What do you use?
Well, they're on, some different kind of rocks and some use of concrete. And so, the first thing that we would try to do is and we've done that before, if there's a substantial, rock or something that is anchored, we won't mess with that. We'll just use the same thing, go in the same spot. It's not worth it to try to, but in areas where the rocks have shifted, and so that's why the dock is maybe falling down, we would take that out, and I detail that in the drawing, that, we'll build a box, 10 to 12 inches, 2 feet by 2 feet, and then we we secure that foot into that concrete. Same thing with the boulder, we'll drill right into the boulder.
Is that the standard we use, is a 2x2 box?
No, it's just something I made up, you can
Did you
use,
do that at Canotto's?
yeah, I've done, yeah,
I don't.
Yeah.
Precast,
I,
No, he's gonna.
precast circular.
Isn't it a?
those are not, you fill those, and we've used those also. It's like, what's the best option for everything, and the building a box out of 2x10 or 2x12s is just quick and easy. We can reuse them again, and
And what do you fill it in?
that's concrete.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, we just make a concrete form and fill it and take away the form, and now you have a block of concrete that the dock is sitting on.
And that's fine, because basically,
That's
if
those
you look at
footage.
how rocky that surface is,
I haven't seen it.
if you, based on the photos, trying to get the precast block to work on that.
It's not gonna work.
No, I'm not talking about a precast block, I'm talking about a precast,
Cement.
fixture you put in and you pour the cement inside of it.
No,
Not a precast, a pre-molded.
Yeah, no, again,
It's just gonna use a form.
I've used those Bigfoot, like just the bottom of the Bigfoot, but it's not always practical.
No, because docks float away on.
And it's easier to, kind of control it.
Okay.
Motion?
Vera, so
All
we
right,
have
is
a
there a
motion?
motion?
Is there any more discussion on the motion?
Could we repeat no more discussion, can we repeat the motion?
The motion was simple. But go ahead.
Motion to table this until January 2023 meeting and ask the applicant to resubmit with appropriate dimensions
Okay.
And,
for the lake.
yeah. And land area to be reclaimed by the lake and land area that will be now filled.
Now you're
in.
amending the motion, but we'll do that.
Well, I'm sorry,
No, that's
is it
fine.
okay? if
No,
I-
that's fine.
Just because I think that's an important factor
I
For
guess-
us, it
that
was
we're now going to use
Mhm.
as the justification
correct,
to make this happen.
correct, which I think is good judgment of LMAC to consider that.
Yeah, that's all we're looking for, is to say, this, then, we decided on this that was not in line with the guidelines. Maybe slightly right or left, wherever you wanna look at it,
Right.
but here's why we did it.
There's a gray area.
And we chose to go with the plan that proposed
Because of the benefits.
because of the benefits to the lake.
I do have those dimensions that in my phone, that I had written them down, they're not on the application. But the way that I'm hearing you, and I don't want to interrupt your making the motion and
We're still, yeah,
but, even if I had all those dimensions tonight, would you have approved this?
well, possibly, but the stairs weren't accurate. So that needs to be changed, right, because the stairs are projecting out into the lake instead of going into the way you have them drawn.
Yep.
And if there's a benefit to the lake, how?
Yeah,
And we
and
want the dimensions on the survey.
Stairs. We need to
and
dimension.
we need the hard points, establishing the
Triangulation.
the triangulation off the corner of the house.
But that would be for any.
But also, didn't we need the width of the stairs, because he said they were 4 feet, and we think they're 3 feet, so
Right,
we need to know what they are.
Right.
They have to be grandfathered.
right. I hope you understand, we have to answer to the town on this. And-
No, I understand, and, just, you know, I've submitted stuff like this before and I've got it to pass, so it's just, and I didn't get it to pass. The board graciously approved the meeting, you know.
Yeah.
It was, and I understand that. So this is just, this is different for me. This seems like a different kind of proceeding and, I don't know, I maybe had a point there somewhere.
It's been a while maybe since you've been in here, but the level of details in is what we're looking for. The change to get around the fact that you're not following the contour is what's new here.
Right.
So,
The rest of it,
and then the other thing, like even like, I want to say we did with Carmen's, was the triangulation thing was the town, you all approved it, wetlands approved it, but then the wetlands agent was then the agent to inspect my triangulations, to find locations for, with me and set all that. So again, to provide it ahead of time, I just want that on record. I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure we need that.
Well, and was Carmen's even approved by us?
No,
I thought Carmen's was approved.
Yes, we
well, it
did,
was,
God bless America.
well, it was kind of
Ripped me
approved by the
apart.
board of selectmen before it came here.
before
so-
it came here.
No, he approved that, definitely.
Before it came to us.
Thank you.
So. Okay. All right, so,
Voted, call the vote.
so, all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so moved. Thank you.
No, thank you for your patience.
Appreciate you
and,
working through this with us.
No, and trying to, you know,
One quick other permit was Jim Price's dock being rebuilt.
Yep,
Isabel Kislik gave an administrative approval and that did not go through wetlands, it's just blessed. And I would recommend the same dock, same.
no
dimensions,
changes.
No changes,
Okay, well then.
same post, same frame.
There's no action we need to take then.
So I'll get the letter to the BOS.
Yep, thank you, thank you,
Thank you.
Steve, I'll send the letter for you.
Thank you.
thank you.
and,
Thank you, Mary.
I like Joel, because
There's no form for that one.
Yeah, just tell him to call me.
no, I'm just saying, he's my customer, so I want to talk to him.
No, I understand, but tell him the reasons, not the emotion,
No,
because I know Joel.
no,
Okay, it's now, 20 after 9.
Thank you.
Are there any critical items that need to be covered tonight?
I can't even think.
What was the doc you just mentioned?
I
here?
fed you, so we can.
Right.
is on the agenda.
I would like to propose new business for January,
Yeah,
that we have a discussion relative to the town beach erosion and the drain next to the town beach
yep,
crap
okay,
that fills this lake.
okay,
Okay, erosion
fair
and
enough.
rain.
Drain.
You can wordsmith that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Step it up. Fix it up. Are we going to carry into, any of the old business that's on the agenda?
Well, is there anything critical that people need to talk about? Okay, so so we have all the standard committee reports.
Yeah, we can skip all that.
Skip that. We have town ordinance on motorboats. Is there anything?
I have a question on, for Mark. Are we anywhere closer to getting the data from the, boat patrol on the registrations that came in to the lake last year?
Yeah, I've got a meeting set up with Deb and
No.
that will be happening on, hold on.
Yeah, no.
I know it's in December.
Can we have it a week before the next meeting?
Yeah, we will address it before the next LMAC meeting.
Like, have it so it can be distributed and understood before the next meeting, not on the eve of the next meeting.
I will see what shape it's in, other than printing out screen captures. I'll figure out a way to get that out.
Okay, you want anything with K-9?
No, I think that we just
It's
need,
in with the goose committee.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, we need
The
to
goose
just.
committee's gonna meet soon, and we're gonna have Min to give us an educational update, and then we're gonna look at options.
Yeah,
Gate repair?
Is the dam being repaired, the dam gate?
We're still going forward, and we're trying to bypass needing Corps of Engineers, which would require like a 3-year wait. And our engineering firm we hired has written up the specs to avoid needing Army Corps of Engineers.
Is there any way, when the gate repair happens, that the water be sucked out lower than the current? She's looking for
A deeper drainage.
a deeper drainage, which we used to have until Vining went through it.
Yeah, I don't believe so, but why don't we put that on the next agenda, and I'll have a full report from Beth and the engineering firm as to what we're gonna do.
okay,
That would really help our phosphorus load.
Downstream might be.
And the last one is,
well, with Bob Miller, we can talk about permit tracker after, or,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine.
I'm not giving you information.
The annual report update,
New
we
business.
can do that under new business, town beach dredging, we'll do that new business. And there was something else on new business?
erosion in the drain.
Okay.
At the beach.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Anything else?
We adjourn.
Okay.
Hey,
we
Mike.
have
Hey, Mike,
Second.
Wait a
Thank
minute,
you.
wait a minute.
No.
Hi, Bob.
Okay, all
Mike,
in
Mike.
favor?
Michael. Wait a minute,
Wait, what?
can you hear me?
Yeah,
Can you make sure that the application for the seawall is sent out to all members before the next meeting, please?
the amended application.
Yep,
Yeah.
I didn't get the original one, so I'd like to
Yes.
get the next one.
Okay,
Mary, can I please get one too, so I can look at it, because I mean, today.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
when he resubmits the application,
Yeah, we'll all get it then, hopefully, right?
Well, I never got the first one, so
Neither did I, Bob.
I know, I didn't get it. either.
I'm not gonna vote on anything I can't look at.
well, I
Yeah.
thought the process was it goes to the subcommittee.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Subcommittee.
I agree, but I think somehow we gotta
in the
connect the
case,
dots.
in the
I
case,
agree.
in the case where there is extenuating circumstances and it's not an administrative approval, then it needs to go to the board.
I agree. The
Everybody
entire-
should get, hey, Mike, everybody should get copies of them regardless.
Okay, fair enough, and that's a
No
good
big
point,
deal.
it's not a big deal, yeah, that's fair.
Because somebody might
So,
see something in their.
Mark, Walter, can you please just make sure all the permit applications go to the entire board, please?
Yeah, I think that's easier. Instead of the sub board, then I'm wondering who in the sub board's actually doing the inspection and who's gonna get back to us. So we'll start hitting everybody, and then,
It's everybody. One
And then-
person still needs to coordinate, Steve, Jimmy,
Yes.
Dave, and I.
Yes.
and whoever the
Jeez.
lead is on the subcommittee, just email the Board of Selectmen, my office back, and just tell me what's going on.
Yep,
All right. Fair
That'd be
enough.
great. Thank you.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Yeah. We're leaving the
Did you
meeting.
stop?
No, hold on.
Okay.